Okay, hello everybody. Sorry for this slight delay here. Let me make sure the captions are being shown and the chat room is on. Okay. Oh, look, okay. All right, well, good to see everybody. We had a few technical difficulties. People who thought they were going to be on Facebook are now tuning in here. So we'll have a nice crowd. So, welcome to the Journal-isms Roundtable. We want to start on time. My name is Richard Prince, and I write an online column called Journal-isms. That's journal-isms.com, which is on diversity issues in the news business. This roundtable is an extension of that. We started the roundtable in 1999 when a friend of ours was leaving to pursue a doctorate. She said, keep these going, and we have. We met every month in various restaurants in Washington, D.C. until the COVID pandemic. When we switched to Zoom, our participation then multiplied, and we hope to have more roundtables that are hybrid, that is meeting in person as well as having people attend via Zoom. We've had 4 of those so far. We think of this as an online dinner party with the purpose to network and to learn. Some of the networking takes place in the chat room, so please feel free to make use of it. A special welcome to those who will be watching later on YouTube. Please leave messages in the comments section if you want to reach us, even if you're on Facebook, and I've asked those people to transfer themselves to Zoom. All the comments are on the record, and we ask everyone to be respectful of other people's time. So please try to be succinct and to the point. Now, first I have an announcement about our next roundtable, which is something special. We're going to be in Chicago at the same time as the NABJ convention. It's going to be on August the 1st, and we're sharing this endeavor with the Global Affairs Task Force, Global Journalism Task Force of the National Association of Black Journalists, and will be hosted there by Chicago Public Media, which is WBEZ and the Chicago Sun-Times. Our topic is going to be press freedom in Black-run countries. The whole issue of authoritarianism that we're discussing in the United States is actually a global phenomenon. And so we'll talk about how it's affecting countries in Africa and in the Caribbean. And we've got a nice lineup that we'll share later on. So without further ado, the first thing we want to do is have some remembrances of one of our number who passed last week. That's Merv Aubespin, who was a president of the National Association of Black Journalists and a longtime member of the staff of the Courier Journal in Louisville. And he touched many people, and many of them are on the call tonight. So Betty Baye could not be here tonight. She discovered she had a conflict. So Michael Days, who also worked in Louisville, and since moved on to Philadelphia, where he was on the masthead there, is going to substitute for her. And is Keith Runyon here? I don't see him just yet. He was the editorial page editor before retiring from the Courier Journal, and is a good friend of Merv's. So Michael, I do see you. I see your name. I don't see you, but
well, I see me.
Oh, I see you. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe that's another Michael.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in any case, I do see you. You're right. There's another Michael whose name is Paul. I see. In any case, for those who don't know why we should stop and talk about Merv for a moment, please tell us why knowing about Merv Aubespin is important.
You know, I'm going to be happy to jump in there. I'm seeing my brother Leon Carter here on the call, and he wasn't in Louisville as long as I was there, but he popped in, and that was a period. When did I go to Louisville? That would have been 1980. And I'd been working at the Democrat and Chronicle in Rochester, New York. I met Merv at a gathering of, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, I met Merv at a gathering at Northwestern University. I think I actually met him at the NABJ convention, but nobody seems to remember who was at that very festive convention. But I met him at Northwestern University, and it was a gathering of graduate students, so people who had graduated from Missouri, Northwestern, Columbia, I think, some graduate school in California. And to nerve Merv, was to love him. So we connected then. I went back to working in Rochester, where I'd been, as you know, Richard, worked there as well. Had been a police reporter, and I covered features and just had a really good connection with Mervyn and Michelle Marriott, who I think a lot of folks on the call know as well. And they very quickly, I went down to interview, and they very quickly said, this is a good place for you. I can't say that I'd really given much thought to working in Louisville, or even had ever been to Kentucky. But Merv had that. If anybody, I think everybody on this call who knew Merv knew how effervescent he was in terms of the cell, and the people there were just wonderful. So I joined that paper, I think in April 1980. When was Derby? It must have been May 1980, because it was right after the Derby. And I have to be honest with you, I spent most of my weekends with Merv, hanging out, talking about the business, talking about journalism, hanging also with Michelle Marriott, who's also gone on to home to be with the Lord. And I've been thinking a lot about this the last week or so, because nobody really talked about diversity, inclusion in those kinds of terms in those days. But there were a number of organizations, including the Courier Journal, which really seemed to be committed to making some inroads. And Mervyn was a champion of making sure that newsrooms began to be diverse. And it wasn't just in Louisville, it was around me. If you went to NABJ in the 80s, and there weren't a ton of us at those meetings in the 80s, where Merv was always a champion of connecting with folks and working with folks and helping folks get placed at different publications. And he was just really a terrific guy, a good journalist. One of the things I will go to my grave being very proud of is Michelle Marriott, and I worked for months on a series of stories, a package of stories called "Being Black in Louisville," which was kind of at the time. The paper decided to run it for 7 days during the Derby week, which is not what one does in Louisville during the Derby. So it was not a particularly positive thing about Louisville. But what one of the big takeaways was that to have influence, to be Black and have influence in Louisville, was to have influence with a number of white people, really prominent white people, and that had never really been said at that point. This was probably 81, 82.
Well, Michael, one of the things that was said in Michelle Marriott's tribute to Merv in the NABJ tribute to their presidents, called "Committed to the Cause," was that he expanded NABJ to reach out to white journalists as allies, and that was one of the things that really distinguished his tenure. Now, I also see that Wayne Dawkins. Can you hear me, Wayne?
Oh, Wayne, I see Wayne.
I can hear you now. I did some fancy tricks to get connected. Hi, everyone.
Good. Okay. Well, Wayne just wrote a piece about Merv for the Black Alumni Network of Columbia University, and also posted it on LinkedIn. So let me ask Wayne, why should Merv be remembered, and what can we learn from Merv?
As Michael Days is saying, Merv was the great connector. So 1981 was my first convention, and he was the vice president. And what was extraordinary about having that convention in Louisville, that was the first time young NABJ ventured out to a mid-sized city and a mid-sized southern city. With the exception of Houston, which was the founding conference with all of like 60 to 80 people, NABJ stayed in either Washington, Baltimore, or Chicago in those first years. They canceled a convention in Kansas City because the leaders at that time didn't want to venture out of the Beltway area or the Atlantic coast. So to even get the conference somewhere else, and that taught a lot of us so much, because I'm a native New Yorker. So finally I was shedding this New York chauvinism that whatever that there's that famous New Yorker cartoon, there's the island of Manhattan and there's everybody else, but we're New York, so we're all that. Well, I quickly was disabused of myself. I learned from that experience as a 20-something-year-old that there were people around the country doing great journalism at great regional newspapers like the Courier Journal, which I dressed down in my early years at Hampton. I dressed down a smug PhD who was saying, well, we should all get PhDs and everything. And I said, you know what? We're going to learn how to be good citizens of this campus, but you know absolutely nothing about us, because you don't know that the Courier Journal and 3 other papers like it is the finishing school to the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. You know nothing about NPR and PBS. So you need to recognize, okay, because we know some things. But I got to thank Merv Aubespin and others for that. So he was a great connector. He was a great teacher. And I was fortunate to be one of those young journalists who, when we became board members and officers like Michael and many other on this call, the first thing Merv said to us was, check our egos at the door. We're here to do some serious work. And in just less than a year, we grew the organization. We tripled the organization in 1 year. Okay. So I can talk endlessly about that, but I'm going to stop there.
Okay. All right. We have time for one more person to answer that question about why we should remember Merv and learn from him.
Leon's here.
Okay, Leon, go ahead.
In 1981.
First, say who you are first.
Leon Carter, editor-at-large at The Athletic. My first job out of school was in 1981, and it was in Louisville. And I never forget that series that Michael Days spoke about, that being Black in Louisville. And I remember walking into the newsroom and seeing Mike Days, Michelle Marriott, and Uncle Merv. And then, of course, on the copy desk was Angela Dodson. And being a young person out of school and seeing Black folks who were making things happen in the newsroom made me feel very good. And I remember talking to Merv, and he said, well, you're coming to NABJ. Now, I didn't know NABJ from ABCD at that time. And I had just joined. So, and that was in June, and I think NABJ was in July or early August. How could I go and tell the sports editor I need 3 or 4 days off? I didn't feel that was right. So I said that to Merv, and I think I said that to Michelle Marriott. And then one day I saw Merv talking to the sports editor. And next thing I knew, the sports editor came over to me and said I had 4 days off. That's who Merv was. He made you feel welcome in the newsroom, but he also made you understand what it is to be Black in a newsroom and the role that you played. Because I was the only African-American on the sports desk, and I think I was the first African-American on the sports desk. And over the years, as I moved on to ESPN and other places, I stayed in contact with Merv. And the last time that I talked to him on the phone was the day that they had the funeral in Louisville for Muhammad Ali. And I'm sitting in my office, and there's Merv on the TV talking about Muhammad Ali and what he meant to Louisville. And I immediately sent a text to one of our ESPN people, and I said, tell Merv I said hello. And between commercial breaks, next thing I knew, my cell phone rang and Merv was on the phone. And that's just the person he was. He made sure he stayed in contact with people. So why is Merv important? Why we should remember him? Because he was Uncle Merv.
Right. By the way, that's such a great view behind you.
Mhm.
Where are you?
This is my place in Connecticut. Is just in short, I created this. This is the window to my right. And I created my jazz room in the middle of the virus when we all had to work remotely. And
Very
these
nice.
figurines came from a shop in Harlem.
Okay, go ahead on.
Richard, I know we
Okay.
need to, but I mean, I just want to follow what Leon was saying. If Merv was really a bridge for NABJ, Merv exposed all of journalism, of the journalism world, to NABJ. It had been kind of a fraternity, sorority kind of thing. And I think Merv was the beginning of the country saying, you need to be part of this. You need to come to this. You need to experience what your people who work in your newsrooms are feeling and experiencing. And when thinking back on, I think that was really the beginning of the growth. I think it's Leon, the growth of NABJ. And there's a lot to be said for warmth. And we could say, one might say that we had some members in the beginning who were could be a little haughty, but that was not Merv. Merv would say, hey, how are you doing? Come on, let's go have a drink. Let's get something to eat. He made you feel welcome, and people felt welcome when they came to NABJ. And most of us, you know, the old heads were in their 30s in those days. Most of us were in our 20s and trying to figure out who we were. We were still having these ridiculous conversations. You be black and be a journalist fairly quickly. But Mervyn was really an amazing bridge for us to grow and be a force.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I do last comment. We didn't talk about his international connections, and I see John Ewart is here. Tell us a little bit about those, if you can, John.
Well, thanks, Richard, and I don't want to belabor the point, and certainly adding to what everyone has said about Uncle Merv. But one area that I don't think actually got enough attention is the work that he's done internationally, not only on behalf of NABJ, but on behalf of the United Nations. He was one of the first people to, certainly not the first, but one of the first to take NABJ members to Africa, and working with Jibril. He's taken dozens. I'm sorry?
Jibril Diallo, who works for
Jibril.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, exactly. Used to be with the UN.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to have taken a few of those trips to the continent with Merv and Jibril and many of our members. And a lot of places that you went, Merv was even more of an ambassador than many of the others on the trip. Among the most memorable was being with Uncle Merv when we met Nelson Mandela at his home in South Africa. And it was really interesting when we got back on the bus. Merv was the one who was leading the group in crying about the visit, because it was so emotional, and the fact that the president at the time had given us over an hour of his time on his stopping to see us on his way to Cape Town. So Merv, he would be remembered not just for what he's done domestically for NABJ and others, but he also had a really big foot, if you will, in the diaspora. And for that, many of us will forever be grateful.
Hear, hear. Thank you, John. John worked in Politico, and he's had his own international connections with press freedom organizations internationally. He'll be with us, by the way, at our press freedom in Black-run countries panel on August the 1st. All right, so now thank you all for that. We want to move on, and we want to toast the first editor of the Washington Post who have come to our roundtable, within a month of his being appointed to the job. And so that's Matt Murray, and we're glad to have him, and we want to wish him and the Post well. So let's raise a glass to the success Matt Murray's tenure at the Washington Post. Hear, hear.
Here's to you guys. Thank you, Richard. It's actually, I hate to tell you this, it's not a month. It's the beginning of my 5th week today, but it's like a get.
Okay, all right, it's close enough. All right, well, we congratulate you. What are you looking forward to in your time in that job?
Well, thank you for inviting me first, let me say, and it's good to see some familiar faces here and some people I know and have worked with over the years, including Kimberly Johnson from the Journals here and Jackie Jones, I know, and it's nice to see some Post bylines too. You know, there's a lot. The Post is in a good position in lots of ways, and I'm excited to be there and be learning the Post. And as you probably have read, we have a project underway to sort of think about how to foster what we've called, for want of a better term, the third newsroom, which is a way to think about innovation and new audiences and going off platform and finding new ways to bring the Post to different kinds of readers and groups. I think when we really get that up and running, which is going to take some effort, it'll be quite exciting because the theory of the case is that there's a huge audience for the Post journalism, or huge audience that are may not, you know, because of youth or habits, may never subscribe to the Post, but should be getting Post journalism. So I think that when we really get that going, there's going to be an opportunity to reach a wide array of people who otherwise wouldn't come and find the Post, while also, I hope, strengthening the Post itself as an institution and the growth and reach of the core product and on subscribers and people who should be getting the Post. So complicated. We've started talking about how to structure it, and I'll have some news soon on people who are going to lead that effort internally and how we're going to move forward on that. But I think despite the bumps that you've undoubtedly read about and some of the immediate circumstances of the last month that have made news, I think we're starting out on an exciting path of reinvention. I truly believe that, or I wouldn't be here at even though it is my hometown paper. So I'm really delighted to be here.
Okay, let's talk. Let me just ask you about those bumps and media
Sure.
coverage.
Sure.
How do you react to this drip of pieces every day or two about what's going on with the leadership of the Post? How does that affect you and your job?
Well, look, it's hard. It's hard for the newsroom. The newsroom, you know, hates, even though the newsroom is writing some stories, you know, it's a hard situation for the newsroom when things feel uncertain. And these days in media, as I think we all know, people are happy to, your competitors are happy to beat up on different ways. And there's both serious questions and there's also a lot of sort of speculative stuff. Look, you know, I think that the only way you can generally proceed the best you can for most people in most cases is shake it off. Don't read the stories about yourself too closely and keep going and keep your eye on the long ball. You know, because ultimately the Post is a huge and important institution that means a lot to a lot of people and does a lot of important work for the country and for its readers. And everybody in the newsroom and probably all the people on this call believes it can and should be bigger and in a better position and doing, you know, we've talked about the financial situation. So everybody is rooting for the Post to get there. And so the best thing you can do is try to look past the immediate moment or day and keep your eye on that ball. That's a bit of a challenge, but keeping the newsroom's head in the game is important. And, you know, my mantra on that is always that nothing helps like news. So writing stories and doing journalism is why we didn't get into this profession really to make money. We got into it to have fun doing journalism. And so just trying to keep everybody in the game there is really, you know, my approach.
Okay. We have time for just a couple of questions. Who's got a question for Matt? No one. Wow, that's great.
Can I ask a question, Rich, if you don't mind?
Yes.
If you can tell us what's wrong with the Post?
What's wrong with the Post?
Wow.
Well, again, I see some distinguished bylines at the Post who worked there for a long time, so it's rather arrogant for me to show up after a month and give my thoughts on what's wrong. So I say it with humility. I'm still in listening mode. I would say, look, I think that first of all, I would say this. I do, and I really mean this. This sounds like PR. There's a lot right with the Post, and that doesn't get out. The range of the journalism, the high quality of the journalism, and the number of things the Post covers is really remarkable when you go under the hood and look at it. Almost in some ways too much. And I don't think the Post gets enough credit for that because we do live in a soundbite, quick hit world where one image or impression takes over and dominates everything. So I think that we shouldn't underestimate how much is right with the Post. I would say in general, and I don't want to say anything that's critical of predecessors or others before me, because as we all know, running a news organization is hard. People fantasize about how easy it was in the old days, but it's tough. I think that the world is moving so quickly, readers' habits are moving so quickly. Keeping up with that has been a challenge. And the Post, to some extent, arguably with its ownership right now, wasn't so incentivized to have to keep up with it. So I see a lot of opportunity to improve the use of data and metrics, improve how we measure ourselves, improve the fact that we are in the business of serving, not writing stories per se, but serving readers with journalism. And how do we do that? And how do we connect with those readers? I also have a sense, without sounding like a typical news guy, that there's work to be done on the commercial side to bring some expertise and product talent and things in-house that the Post hasn't really had, and get ourselves on the front foot. I mean, ultimately, these are questions of culture and structure, and they're kind of boring questions that way. But I think being built for this world in a certain sense is what the Post has to do. And I had some success in the Journal when I was the deputy editor, sort of recalibrating the Journal for growth and for the growth that they've had since. And so I see the opportunity for the Post to get that